Today we're talking about the properties of addition. Okay, so the first property is the inverse property of addition. What this says, basically in algebra terms, these are variables. Remember, they can stand for any number. So in algebra terms, a plus its opposite, a negative a, gives us 0. So basically, adding the inverse cancels out to give us 0. So in numbers, please write this example down for yourself. In numbers, it would be like 5 plus a negative 5 equaling 0. Okay, so what is the inverse of 6? For example, it would be negative 6. What is the inverse of a negative 2/3? It would be positive 2/3. And do we need that plus sign? No, because we assume that numbers, when they are positive, do not need a plus sign. What is the inverse of 7/10? Negative 7/10. Okay, so let's try another example. The identity property of addition. In algebra, it's like saying any number plus 0 equals that same number. So basically, adding 0 doesn't change its identity. If you add nothing to me, you still have me. Okay, if you add nothing to a number, you still have that same number. So for example, if you add nothing to negative 7, what do you get? Think about it really hard. Negative 7. Okay, so that is the identity property. Make sure you have it written down. What about the commutative property? Basically what that says is you can add numbers in any order when they're addition. So C plus D could also be like D plus C. So for example, we could flip-flop the negative 2 with the 6, and you're still going to get 4 no matter what you do. What about the associative property? All right, so what this basically says is who you associate with. You hear that word in the associative property? Basically who you're grouped with. Who you associate with is your group, right? So changing the grouping of numbers will not change their sum. For example, if I add C plus D first and then add E, it doesn't matter if I add D plus E first and then add C. I'm going to get the same answer. So down here, if I add 6 plus 2 and get 8 and then add the 4, it doesn't matter if I would change it around and add the 6 plus the 4 first and then add the 2 to get 12. Both are going to still give me 12. Okay, so using the properties, they want us to evaluate each one of these steps and justify with what property we used. So in this first one, we see that there are 2 negative numbers. So we would add them together first and group them together. So switching the order is the commutative property, and then grouping them is the associative property. So if I just rearrange it, commutative. If I group them, associative. Okay, so when I switch this around, I get a negative 15 plus 3 is negative 12. These properties are just addition. Okay, there's no crazy property going on. It's just the property of addition, while these are the commutative and the associative respectively. Okay, so over here, I want you to try some on your own. Figure out which properties you would use and which ones and which you would use first. Okay, go ahead and try it. Pause the video. I'm actually going to go through the answers. So for this one, these are grouped right now. I'm going to regroup them. So I'm going to say negative 17.4 plus a negative 3.6 and then add the other 6 on because I want to group this together to get a negative 21. So this would be the associative property of addition. Okay, then I'm going to add 6. So when I add 6, that's just the regular old addition property, right? I'm just taking a negative 21, adding 6 to it to get negative 15. Okay, so with this next one, I'm just going to rearrange them. And the first step, rearranging, is the commutative property of addition. Okay? The next step is I'm going to group them. I want to add the 8 with the negative 8 first, and then add the 19. So now that's the associative property. I want them to associate together. And these are all the properties of addition, but it's important to write that because there are some associative and commutative properties that aren't addition. So we need to make sure that we write it out. I know it's tedious, but do it. Okay, so when I add these together, I get 0. And 0 plus 19 is going to be the identity property. Why? Because I'm adding nothing to 19 and it remains itself. So this is the identity property. And again, of addition is important. Make sure you put that down. Okay, go ahead and try these two. Tell me which property is being illustrated. I'm going to go through the answers, so make sure you pause the video. All right, this is the inverse property of addition. Okay, what we're saying here is I'm adding its opposite to get 0. Over here, I just changed the order, so it's the commutative property of addition. Again, property of addition is incredibly important. Okay, so things to remember. Things that should be in your notebook should be the inverse property of addition, the identity property of addition, the commutative property of addition, and the associative property of addition. Other things to remember is that you must write property of addition because, as you will soon find out in the next couple of videos, we're going to experience properties that have the same first name, but maybe not necessarily that same label as property of addition. They're going to be different properties going on. So, again, make sure you have good notes. I will be checking for thoroughness. So, make sure that your notes are complete with all 4 properties. Make sure that you have your title, which would be the adding or the properties of addition. Okay, so make sure that you have properties of addition and then 4 properties, and maybe even underline or highlight them. All right, see you next time.